Hello, this is Lafayette Faust. Welcome back to another episode of True Tales of Nevermore Hollows, where we step outside the realm of fiction and interview real people who have had real paranormal experiences. Tonight, I am speaking with Matthew Orton. Matthew is the host of the Drunken Cryptids Podcast. He's a fascinating man with some extremely interesting paranormal experiences that he is willing to share with us. Now, I've not known Matthew very long, but it seems like we're long-lost brothers, and it is my honor to have him on the show with me tonight to share his terrifying encounter he had one night in the backwoods of Texas. You're in for a real treat, so I invite you to sit back, turn on a light, and prepare yourself. Okay, so Matthew, you are the host of Drunken Cryptids Podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Oh, all right. Yeah. Hey, Alan. So, excellent intro. Thank you so very much for that. I appreciate that. It's kind of hard to top that. But, yeah, the Drunken Cryptids, it's a podcast. I do encounters. I interview people who have had encounters with the paranormal, the cryptids, UFOs, fairies, whatever the case may be. And the idea was born during 2020. We all remember the pandemic. And when they started reopening up establishments, I had semi-retired, so I had nothing to do and was hanging out at this local watering hole, local bar. And every evening there was a small group of us. And, as it happens when you get a group of people together, stories start getting told, paranormal. Right. Mm-hmm. And I had this crazy encounter in Fort Hood when I was in the service, and everybody wanted to keep hearing about it. And one of the bartenders actually said, you should start a podcast.
Cool.
And I was like, I didn't know what a podcast was. No clue. I put the podcasters in with the YouTubers, because my perception of YouTubers were people who are playing video games and getting paid to have videos of video games.
Right.
So, and so I kicked around the idea, and, I started digging more into my encounter and trying to, figure out what happened and what it was. And so my buddy Jacob, he told me that I need to listen to some of these shows, and I found Sasquatch Chronicles.
Right.
I started listening to Wes. Mm-hmm. And, sent Wes an email saying, hey, I had this crazy encounter. Does it make sense to me? And just kind of curious as to what it could be. Okay. So we emailed back, we talked, and, I did an episode with him about it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of lit a little fire under me. I was like, that was a lot of fun. Maybe I should do this.
Right.
So, and then another good friend of mine, he stepped up, and he was always wanting to get into the broadcasting world. I started wanting to do podcasting. And he kept pushing me. He's like, man, you got a great charisma for it. You got great energy. You got a good voice. And, of course, nobody believes they have a good voice. I don't care what anybody says.
Exactly.
Like, I can't stand my voice.
Right.
So I have a hard time listening to my own shows when I have to go through and help with editing and stuff.
Right.
But, he pushed me. And, yeah, so Drunken Cryptids was a name that I came up with. Just to have a campfire experience, just to sit around having a few drinks with your friends and talking encounters and breaking it down and trying to discuss and see what it was, what it could be, and where it's going.
Good. Well, one of the things is I struggled with too is when I started a podcast, I didn't know what a podcast was, and so, working through that process, you come up with, first you got to have a cool name, for your show, and then you got to have good content. What I love about you is Drunken Cryptids. That's such a catchy name for your show. And then once I started speaking with you and getting to know you a little bit better, it fits your personality so well. Not that you're a drunk, but what I'm saying is that campfire, like you said, you wanted it to be this loose, free-flowing campfire thing where just some friends are sitting around telling stories and let it be this, kind of just where you start at A and you end up at Z and you go, how did we get here? It was such a cool conversation. But then the second part of that is cool content, right? Which is where we're headed with that. Your content is great. When Brother Chris, Madman Goins, put me and you together, and says, "Man, you got to listen to him. He's got some cool stuff, and he's coming at it from a slightly different angle." And so I started listening, and I was like, "Look, this cat's cool. I got to get to know him." So I'm glad to have you on my show. And
I am fully honored to be on your show. I'll be honest. I mean, I heard you guys, your interview on Cryptids of the Corn, and I made a mental note to look you up.
Good.
And my life took a really weird, dark twist immediately afterward. And it got pushed to the back of my mind. Right. And I did an episode with Cryptids of the Corn, and Chris heard it, and he emailed me. And he's like, "Man, I just heard your episode. Holy cow, this is who I am." And it took me a minute to put two and two together and went, "Oh, I remember. Oh." So I started emailing back. And yeah, it was a pleasure to have you guys on my show. I mean, we could have kept going for hours.
Right, for real. When our first episode was done, a couple of weeks ago when you had us on, and I came downstairs, my wife was like, "Man, y'all had a lot to talk about." And I went, it's literally like we're brothers. Me, you, and Chris, we just connected, and everything just kind of fell into place. So, yeah, you're right. We could talk for hours.
I'm completely honored to call you two my brothers now. I really am. And, there's so much in common between, both of us, all three of us in our own unique way.
Exactly. And so,
and that's what makes it work.
Right. So, which gets us to the show today. One of the things I wanted to do was just, introduce you to my audience. And, I had Chris and I, when he came on board with the show, back a few months back, he's been with me now for over a year doing art for us. And then I just decided, what, God brought Brother Chris into my life. Let's just make him part of the show. And he's doing voices and stuff like that. But, when we decided to start doing interviews, we came up with a series that is separate from what we do, where we interview folks like yourself. And we call it True Tales of Nevermore Hollows, where we talk to folks who have had true experiences. So starting with that today, tell me, I guess, you said there was this one particular cryptid experience that you had that you were trying to figure out what it meant. What was it? How do you wrap that into your new worldview? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'll give a little background real quick before we get into it, because it kind of helps, I grew up in northern Utah. My stepdad had a cabin up in the Uintas, and found out later on that it was 30 miles of the crow flies from a very famous ranch that's named after a particular cryptid. Okay. So we didn't know this. Yeah. So we grew up there, spent all my summers playing in the Uintas, had a blast, absolutely loved it. Was a mountain kid. My real dad had horses, so I grew up with the horses, everything. So we, with my real dad, we go up to the Wind Rivers in Wyoming. So no stranger to the wilderness, no stranger to the woods, always hunting, always fishing, doing all those experiences. And I, joined the military. But I grew up, though, with the legends of Bigfoot. I mean, everybody there knows about Bigfoot. And it's just one of those things. I remember seeing, as a kid, the Patterson-Gilmore film. Right. And my grandpa looked at me and said, he's up there, pointing towards the mountains. And so there was always a belief that there's Bigfoot. And, my mom had an encounter. My stepdad had an encounter, up there in the Uintas. And so, it was every time we'd go up there, it would always be kind of a joke, but kind of serious at the same time. Watch out for Bigfoot. Wow. And so as kids, we would look for Bigfoot. Right. So what you're saying is because they had their experiences. That was just part of your upbringing. You were like, this is literally something that I believe in because folks that I care about and trust have had encounters. So, you and I had talked on your podcast about how a lot of folks don't have experiences because we think that they just shut themselves off to even the idea of it, so that you're not aware of what's going on around you. So anyway, with that background, so that brings us to, your actual experience. Right. So, I remember it was in summer of '92. We had hiked up to this lake called Hellhole Lake, which by the way. I'm actually planning an investigation up in that area next year. But we hiked up to Hellhole Lake. We came down. There's a parking area just outside the National Forest. You can drive 4-wheel drives, to a certain point, park, and then you have to hike or horseback the rest of the way in. And we call it the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom starts jumping up and down, and she's all excited. And there was a print in this wide open area that's probably a good 60-meter radius.
Okay.
Wide open, right in the middle of it. And it looked like, at the time, the ball of your foot, a bare foot, just the ball of it, huge, like something was sprinting across the open field. Now, doing the research, and digging into this stuff and hearing about the spider crawl, I think that what we caught, and I have the picture of it, I'll send it to you. I think it's his right hand.
Ah.
Instead of, as you can almost see off to the left of it, the thumb.
Okay.
The thumb impression into the ground. I'll send you the pictures that I still have of it from 92, which is crazy. But it stood out to us.
That'd be awesome.
So I was the kid. I was the kid in school, though, that was checking books out on werewolves and vampires and ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot. And, I was that weird kid, and I owned it. I'm not going to lie. I absolutely owned it.
Me too.
And my son, who's 6, he is so into bugs and insects, which is, he loves spiders, and there's not a lot of people that like spiders.
Right.
So that kind of makes him a little bit unique. And I was talking to him this week about it, and because he told me he didn't have too many friends at school. And I said, don't worry about it. You're going to get your tribe eventually.
Right.
I said, Daddy was the same way.
I was
no.
too.
And he goes,
I was too, yeah.
Yep. He says, you have a lot of friends. I said, because I found my tribe, my people that, want to learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
So when I joined the military in 93, I had a great career. And in 2002, I was stationed at Fort Hood. I was a squad leader. I was an infantry squad leader. I was running an EIB site, which is the Expert Infantryman Badge. And I was running a station, and not the site. I had a station. And this is where infantry guys have to go through. They test.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on basic infantry skills. And it's a 4-day grueling test period. And they have to go through, they have to qualify. Now, you have to be an expert rifleman to go through. You have to have a high PT score. And there's a lot of it's grueling. So earning the EIB is an actual honor. So I earned mine in Korea.
Okay.
But so running this, So I'm running the station, and the unit had to do a gunnery. So I was in a mechanized unit, so the Bradleys had to go qualify, and they had to use live ammo, everything, but they needed to have an ammunition site. And since the unit threw it together, they just picked a certain location and made this an AHA, an ammunition holding area, AHA.
Okay.
That's why it's called the AHA story. So it's 24-hour duty. You sit out there for 24 hours, and you're bored. You're just watching ammo. And so I'm trying to get my station set up. I get stuck on this guard detail, to be the NSOIC first shift. And my second time out there, because you pull 24 on, you'd be out for 24, but then you would do your normal, duties, and then you go back to it again.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was my second rotation out there. The first time, nothing. I slept. It was great. It was a boring, good detail. Mm-hmm. So that morning, I relieved Sergeant M, and he looked completely exhausted. He was worn out. He had the bags under his eyes, looked like he hadn't slept. And I was like, man, did y'all have a busy night? And he was like, no, we had coyotes. I was like, coyotes? He goes, yeah, man, coyotes kept coming in, to our AO, Area of Operations, and they were just harassing us. And I was like, coyotes?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like coyote behavior. I mean, they'll get fairly close, but they're not going to harass you.
Exactly. So he told me, he said him and his guard slept in the bed of his truck. And I was like, oh. And he was just really happy to get out of there. So the two soldiers that I relieved, and I'll refer to them as Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett here in a second, and you'll see why in a second, they hear this conversation. And these two soldiers, they weren't my platoon. They weren't another platoon, so they hadn't worked, directly for me, and I hadn't worked, for them. They had different, chain of command, but they got stuck with this detail. And this was on a Saturday. Sorry, morning coffee still. So, As the morning goes on, it's August, it's 2002. We're in Central Texas. Obviously, it's 1,000 degrees outside. And drinking water, we had MREs to eat. And I was tired of the MREs. It was just payday, and I had some cash on me. And I can't leave the site, being the NCIC. So I told one of these kids, hey, why don't you go down to Burger King, which is about 30 minutes away, go get some Whoppers so we can have something other than. And he was excited. Oh, yeah, so yeah, I'll go down and pick them up. So I gave him $20. He runs down to Burger King, and he came back with $20 worth of Whoppers.
Okay.
Didn't bring me my change. And I was like, really? And he goes, well, you said to get Whoppers, Sergeant.
Like, in the 90s, you could get $20 worth of Whoppers, and that'd be a big deal. Nowadays, that's what, 1.5 Whopper?
Yeah, I think you get 2. Yeah, you're going to get about 2 Whoppers out of that now. Right. But yeah, back then it was, it was a lot of Whoppers. So now infantry soldiers, when they're in the field, are the most dangerous, bored creatures in the world. And that's no lie. They are either sleeping or they're coming up with really creative, strange ideas to do things.
Gotcha.
And they get really inventive. I was once a young infantry private as well and came up with some crazy ideas. So these guys, they're all excited. They had heard, Sergeant M talking about the coyotes. And they're like, hey, Sergeant, can we make traps for the coyotes? And of course, this is when I come, David Crockett and Daniel Boone. And I was like, all right, guys, do your thing. I know that's not going to work. They're going to try and do some, half-brained traps. It's not going to work. And I was watching them try to make them anyways. And they do. They take these Whoppers out, the leftover, and they go out to the perimeter, and they're setting up these little Whopper traps for the whole entire, late in the afternoon. And I'm just watching them while I'm reading my book. And they come back, and we're just sitting around visiting. And soldiers also out in the field discuss just only a handful of topics. I mean, we go through religion,
right.
We go through politics a little bit, but most soldiers really don't care about politics in all honesty. It doesn't matter who's in or out. We're got to do what we got to do.
Right.
But we discuss religion, the supernatural, paranormal, girls, home, and rotate all the way through, beard, the whole basic topic. So, guys were talking about at that time. And that's what we're doing. Evening comes in. It's August, so of course the sun sets late.
Right.
And I had cracked open a chem light, which is a glow stick. I had my little flashlight. I had a can of Pringles I brought with me, and I was snacking on those. I was reading my book, and one of them said, "Did you hear that?"
And
as soon as he said, "Did you hear that?" I paused, and I said, "Hear what?" And he said, "Sergeant, it sounded like somebody dropped a half-filled canteen on the ground."
Okay.
And the old plastic canteens, if you would drop them, they would make this unique thunk sound.
Okay.
So I listened for a minute. And where the site was located at, we were probably good about 500 meters off of the main hardball road, paved road. Okay. So we're sitting there, and I'm listening for a minute, and I sound like a car goes down. Hit something on the road, like it hit a rock or something, and it echoed. And I went, "That's what y'all heard."
Okay.
I'm like, "No, Sergeant, that's not at all what we heard. We didn't hear that. We didn't hear that. We didn't hear that." So as I'm sitting there, I realize, because the hard road is to my right, about 500 meters away, nothing to my left. That's all training area and everything.
Okay.
And to my left, I realized that there's no crickets.
Oh, that's a clear sign that something's happening, right?
Yep. There's no night sounds. There's no nothing. And this is where, all my training and everything's kicked in. And I realized, okay, someone's over there. Not something. Someone's over there.
Right. Because while you're open to those, as a kid, while you've been conditioned by your family to be open to the idea, you're still living in a practical world at that moment in your life. So I can see why your mind wouldn't have necessarily gone to something paranormal. So interesting. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, nothing came paranormal in my mind till later on in the encounter.
Okay.
So, in all honesty, I'm thinking, okay, there's someone over there. There's no reason we've been there all day. The insects, everything around us, they know we're there.
Right.
They know we're not a threat, Just like when you go hunting, you go out there early in the morning, you set up, you let the wolves get used to you.
Right.
To adapt to you, to your presence, and that makes it easier for the hunt. So I realized this, the crickets, all of a sudden, the cricket sound starts picking up to the left. And I'm like, okay. Then I realized to my right, there's no sounds.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay. Now, my soldiers haven't noticed this yet.
Okay.
They're still, they're visiting and talking because they were in the same platoon, so they were buddies. And at that point in time, the Humvee started coming down the road from the gunnery site to bring expended brass and links, put it into the AHA site where the ammunition was, and they get more out.
Okay.
So I get up at this point in time, put everything in the back of my head, walk over there, set my chem light down, my book down, everything's down in this old camel shelter that we were using, and start talking to the Humvee driver, who I happen to know. And, me and him just visiting back and forth. My guys are helping unload the ammo. They're getting count. I'm double counting the boxes. I got a clipboard. I got to count off what they put in and what they take out. So there's an accurate count of everything. Because I'm responsible for the ammo. So when I look over at the camo net where my glow stick was at, it was gone.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, well, damn it, one of those guys got a hold of my chem light. And about, 3 minutes later, Daniel Boone comes to me and goes, hey, Sergeant, can I get the chem light from you real quick? I need to look and, I'm trying to get this number down.
Okay, so he doesn't have
it. I thought y'all had it.
Okay.
And he goes, no, we don't have it. And I looked at the driver, I was like, yes, I do. They're messing with me. I said, you got a chem light? He goes, yeah, hey, Sergeant, I got a whole box for you. So he gave me a whole box of these things. And these things are like gold in the military at that time. So he gives me a whole box. I'm like, all right, cool. We get everything counted, everything's good. He drives off. And we go back to the chem light, and I'm literally looking around for my chem light. I'm focused on my chem light. Like, where is this thing at? So I'm looking out. I half expected to see it, running through the woods, like something, a coyote had came in and grabbed it or something.
Right.
But my Pringles, untouched.
Okay.
My book, untouched.
Okay.
Just the chem light was gone. That was the only thing that was missing. So I'm like, all right. And the sounds started again, or the lack thereof. And at this point in time, these kids had caught on to it.
Okay.
And we're listening to this for about 30, 45 minutes. We're listening to the sounds change, left to right, left to right. And they're like, Sergeant, what's going on? I was like, well, either there's somebody out here messing with us, or there's somebody out here messing with us. And there was nothing paranormal.
And that would have been not wise for somebody to mess with a couple of soldiers or a group of soldiers out in the woods. It just doesn't make sense that it would have been civilians or something like that.
Well, so where we were located at, we were in North Fort Hood, and this was a training area that I wasn't familiar with. And I'd been stationed at Hood since 99
okay.
at this time. And, I mean, there were a whole bunch of others we went trained at, never here. And also, when you do AHA duty, you're supposed to have a weapon and a radio.
Right.
And I had none.
Okay.
No cell phones, no nothing. I had no way to reach out to the world if I needed help.
Oh.
I had no way to protect ourselves if we needed help. Completely unarmed. But my mindset was there was another unit out there training, because Fort Hood is a huge military base. I mean, 3rd Corps headquarters was there at the time. You had the 4th ID headquarters there. You had the 1st Cavalry Division headquarters there, and all the battalions and brigades under, all the brigades and battalions under them. Huge installation. So, I mean, just because your unit was out trained doesn't mean that the other unit wasn't training. So I was thinking at this point in time to where there's somebody out here training. They think we're the OPT 4.
Okay.
And they're trying to see what's going on. And my kids at this point in time are nervous. So I tell them, I say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go mark the whole entire AHA with all these chem lights that we have. We're going to mark off all corners. We're going to light it up as best we can, because whoever's out here, maybe they think we're the OPT 4. So again, my mind is not anywhere cryptid.
Right.
My kids, on the other hand, they're spooked. And Yes, as my dog is apparently. But so we walk up. I got my little pin light. We walk into the first picket. I crack it, shake it, I mark it. We walk down the line. I get the second one, crack it, shake it. I mark the second one. And all this happens simultaneously here in a second. As I turn the corner, I step into a cold spot.
Okay.
And the cold spot was so cold, I saw my breath in my flashlight.
Okay. That's usually paranormal, less cryptid, more paranormal. Interesting.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm stepping this cold spot off to my left, which was down where we first heard the of insects. I heard the thunk.
Okay.
And Alan, it literally sounded just like a half canteen filled with water that hit the ground and made this thunk sound.
Okay.
So these kids hear it. I'm trying to step back into the cold spot, which is gone.
Okay.
At this point in time. And I'm looking to my left, and I'm bumping into these guys. That's how close they were behind me. And they're like, "Did you hear it, Sean? Did you hear it? Did you hear it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I heard that."
Okay.
I heard that. So all this is happening. The cold spot's in the back of my head, trying to process. But again, too, though, my mind is still in a military mindset.
Right.
This is not paranormal. There's something out here. There's somebody out here. I should say there's another unit out here. And I said, "Okay, guys, this is mark the rest of the Yaha. Let's go ahead, see what we have." So we hurriedly go through. We get back to the camo net, which wasn't too far from. It was probably about 20 meters from the ammunition itself.
Mm-hmm. And
we're sitting there, and at this point in time, everything is quiet.
So now let me ask you a question. The cold spot. I know you're still not thinking at this point anything paranormal or even spiritual at this moment, because that's typically what the cold spots indicate, is some sort of spiritual activity. Where did your mind go at that moment? I know you're in the moment, but I'm just curious, how did that cold spot did it trigger anything at all in your mind at that moment?
Well, so I mean, now being this was 22 years ago, and I do remember the cold spot. My mind was like, what the,
Right, because you were in Texas, right? That's what we're getting at. It's Texas heat. You're in August. You said you're not going to have cold spots.
No, I mean we were sweating all day. It doesn't cool off at night either. It's still hot. It's Texas,
right?
And it was. It was an honest to goodness cold spot.
Okay.
It was cold, and of course, in my mind. Now the paranormal is coming in the back of my mind.
Right.
The front of my mind is still the military mindset.
Gotcha.
And
training.
So when everything was
you're relying
quiet,
on that training at that point.
Yep. So everything's quiet, and now my soldiers are looking at me. Now they're thinking, obviously, there's something out here that's not right.
Right.
So whatever they're experiencing, whatever they're dealing with in their mindset was not good. They're kind of huddled up together. They were, scared, and they're looking at me for leadership and guidance. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I've been trained to have a handle, physical enemy forces, nothing like this.
Okay. And
I remember I said, "Okay, guys, this is what we're going to do." I said, "Somebody's out here messing with us. They know where our camo net's at." And I was whispering. I said, "We're going to step outside of it, and we're going to get ourselves in. We're going to get a little perimeter, back to back. We're going to squat down, and we're just going to chill and see what happens." So I move us out, and I'm facing the direction where the hardball's at. And I had the ammunition area to my left, and immediately to my right, probably arm's distance away, and that's where I set us up at, was a thicket that ran parallel, to the camo net. And it was a good, thick Texas thicket.
Okay.
So where nothing's getting in and out of there. So I set us there to be a kind of a camouflage blend in with that for the backdrop. Mm-hmm. So anything coming in is going to associate maybe with us squatted down as being camouflage at night.
Okay.
So, now again, we had no night sights. We were out there, naked, in all honesty.
Right.
So I get squatted down. There's no sounds going on. There's no insects. And something starts walking towards me.
Okay.
It was a bipedal step, 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 and I want to say Daniel Boone was to my left.
Okay.
And he's hearing this, and he kept saying, oh crap. That wasn't what he was saying, but you get the point I'm trying,
I got you.
He kept saying, oh, yeah. And I was elbowing him to shut him up, and I had my little pin light.
Okay.
Ready to go. And, I let it get, and I'm trying to squat down low. I'm trying to have the silhouette of the trees. The moon's not up yet. We got some starlight, so it's completely dark out there. But you can still see. So I have the silhouette of the tree line. I'm trying to squat down low because whatever's going to walk up is going to break that silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets close, you're looking down, looking up. So if something's coming in, you're going to see it break.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to do. And I let it get to about 4. I mean, it had to be 4 feet in front of me.
Okay.
I can't see anything. As soon as I turned that pen light on, something moved immediately into my right.
Okay.
In the thicket, bolted. Nothing was in front of me.
Huh.
And now all this is happening simultaneously. So something to my right bolts to the thicket. I jump up. I race forward to go around the thicket, up this berm, to chase whoever it is.
Right.
And as soon as I get to the top of the berm, this rock goes landing behind me. Boom, 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 big rock.
Okay, so something had thrown the rock is what you're getting at, correct?
Yes, something had thrown this rock. I spin around. I go back down the berm, and the berm was about 5 feet tall. At the bottom of the berm was Daniel Boone. And again, all this is happening simultaneously. I grab him by his top, and I pull him face to face. And I'm Sergeant Orton. And, we're almost nose to nose. And I'm not using really polite language with him. And it was, if this is you guys out here with me, I'm going to leave you out here in the woods dead.
Okay.
As I'm saying this to him, the kid is crying. Alan, he's literally crying.
Okay.
And this log in the thick woods behind me crumbles like something big stepped on. The log, you've been out in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Sound?
Right, yeah. Very distinct.
Yep. And I realized at this point in time, it's not him. It's not David Crockett. David Crockett's about 2 feet from him.
Mm-hmm.
I let him go, bolt up over this berm, and I get 10 feet into the woods.
Okay.
And it was silent. And I remember I'm about 10 feet in the woods, 10, 20 feet in. I got in, and I remember I stopped.
Okay.
And every part of me was screaming to get out.
Okay.
This is not right. This is not normal. And at this point in time, I know there's something, not someone, something is out here.
Right. Just alone the fact that you thought it was in front of you, and when you shone the light at it, something from your right moved. And now we're clearly into something supernatural.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even with the light on, the woods were dark. Okay. It just felt
I've been
dark.
there. You're like, how it's that energy. It's that dark energy, man. It just soaks up the light.
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah, like I'm getting goosebumps again just for going through it. And so I remember I slowly backed out, and I remember stood there on the little tank trail, and I remember feeling to a point of defeated,
beaten. That negative. That's something. It's funny if I can interject. I had a conversation with my son yesterday, and we were speaking about the enemy. The enemy wants to keep us in a state of doubt and despair and a lack of self-confidence and all that kind of stuff. So when you're feeling that oppression out there at that moment, that is that negative spiritual dark energy that's trying to, it's feeding off of you.
I agree. It was, like I said, so we're not done with it yet.
Okay.
No, it's because, and I'm paraphrasing a lot of this, because if we were to go into the encounter, it's sort of fully in depth, and there's a lot that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
So I back out of the woods, I get back on the tank trail, and I remember that, like I said, feeling defeated, feeling beaten, overwhelmed. and just morally devastated. It is the best way of describing it.
Right.
And I remember looking at the woods, my little flashlight on, and I happened to look over to my right, and there was my truck. And I went, oh. I walk over to my truck, I start my truck up, and I turn the headlights on. And those headlights were like this beam of light coming from heaven saying, ta, like angels were singing. I mean, it was amazing.
Right.
It lit up the whole area. And I was like, yeah, I've got you now. You know, that kind of feeling. But then again, too, that military guy comes back in and goes, no, you can't. You got to maintain noise and light discipline.
You know, even though we're open to the spiritual realm and paranormal stuff, we're still human. Our mind wants to go to explainable. So.
Yep. So my mind went, nope, got to turn off. Nope, don't do it. Don't do it.
Right.
So I turned off the truck. I turned off my headlights. And I remember like, oh. But this was 2002. And there was a movie that had come out in 2001 that everybody loved, Fast and Furious.
Right.
The first movie, great. So, and everybody was all, you know, decorating their cars and trucks and doing everything for the movie. And I was an idiot at the time too, so I put the neon lights on my hood.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, my neons. And you know, they were blue lights, so I turned them on, and it would put off enough little light to kind of light that area up.
Okay.
So when I would be at the camo net, I have my back would have light, so I could see.
Gotcha. So
I remember I turned on the neons. I walked over the camo net. At this time, Daniel Boone and David Crockett are almost hugging each other, and I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, they were literally like hugging each other.
Yeah,
they were scared to death,
right?
And they were begging. Can we leave? Can we leave? Sergeant, can we go? Can we go? We got to go. We got to go. We got to leave. We got to leave. We got to leave. And I lit up a cigarette, and I looked at him and said, "No, we can't. You know, we have general orders. First general order is I will guard everything to limit my post and quit my post only when properly relieved.
Okay.
We have to stay. This is our job. We are required to stay here." And they were adamant about us leaving. And I got about halfway through, and I looked over my shoulder, my truck, where the neons were at. And Alan, something walked in front of it.
Oh.
It winked.
Oh, no.
And I dropped the cigarette. I bolt there, and this is probably 10 feet from where I'm at. So in a matter of seconds, I'm at the front of my truck.
Okay.
There's nothing running down the road. There's nothing bolting through. There's nothing going through the woods. There's nothing hiding around. There's nothing under the vehicles. Nothing at all.
Okay.
And that's when I was done. I was beat.
Yeah, so at that moment, there is no explanation that you can come up with in the moment that explains a natural occurrence.
Correct. And I just remember reaching in, turning off my neons, and I walked back over to the guys, and I walked away from the camo net. I sat down on the ground, and they came over by me. And they sat down too, and I lit up another cigarette. And I looked at them, and I said, "We can't leave. We can't leave." And we sat in that spot for the rest of the evening. We didn't sit in the camo net. We sat in that spot.
Right.
You know, and honestly, this is one of the last thing I really remember is I sitting in that spot until the sun came up.
Wow. I mean, you're sitting together for safety, but also you're trying to draw that positive energy from each other so that you can understand, that's your defense. So let me ask you, when this thing walked in front of the lights there, what were your impressions on it? Was it big? Was it shadowy? Was it furry? What was it?
Well, you're the first person to ask me that question, honestly, which is crazy. So it was more of a, seriously, good question. It was more of a shadow. Okay. It was just like, someone big. Mm-hmm. Just it was like a wink. It was a quick wink.
Okay.
Not a prolonged slow through, whatever it was, but it was only it was only on the driver's side.
Okay.
That winked. And it was something physically that blocked the light out.
Yeah. So
where there was real no definition, but in my mind, looking back, it was more of a big shadow thing. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I thought about trying to do, hypnosis regression and stuff like that.
Right.
To go back to that encounter to pull out more details, because I mean, in all honesty, it's like, I remember sitting down at the end and feeling completely crushed and devastated and beaten. Then I remember the moon coming up.
Right. You said morally devastated. I find that interesting because that literally goes to the heart of, Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against, the spirits of darkness and principalities of evil. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that every day, all day long, you're in a spiritual battle, and sometimes you come up against something like what you came up against that is so oppressive that it can literally wither you spiritually.
It does. It honestly does. There's so much when it comes to the paranormal and the cryptids and that side of our reality. Mm-hmm. That most people don't realize, and I agree with you. I think that we are daily battling these things, and again, people are out of tune with it, and I think that's where we're having a lot more of issues, right? In our society and stuff, with people snapping, people doing things that 100 years ago was unheard of, even in our generation, 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, stuff that's happening today was completely unheard of, and we would have never thought this.
Right. You're right.
So, I mean, it's just where the world's gone. And I think, I believe that there is so much to the supernatural and the paranormal and to the cryptid side of our reality that we've lost touch with it.
Well, let's put it into...
When it comes to Bigfoot, Bigfoot's on every continent. There's even been sightings in Antarctica.
Right.
He or she's on every continent. It's through every culture.
You're right. So there has to be some truth to it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So let's try to put this to because a lot of the folks that listen to our type of content, they're open to the idea of it. But I do have a number of listeners and subscribers who, they just like a scary story, but they don't necessarily believe in this. It's all, it's just hogwash, man. I just like the stories. But let's put it to you this way. When we're talking about these spiritual battles, kind of like what you just said, we've got things happening today that didn't happen even 30 years ago and definitely didn't happen 100 years ago. I feel that, while there still are pockets of us who believe in these types of things and are open to them, I think as the world has grown in population, the vast majority of the people don't take it seriously. So to put it kind of in a military thing, if you don't understand that the enemy exists, then you're not going to study the enemy, and if you're not going to study the enemy, you're going to fall victim to the enemy, and that's exactly what's happening here in our spiritual warfare.
Yep. You are, I believe, 100% correct.
So I'll tell you this: when you first started this story and you got to the point of the Whoppers, one of the things I try to do with Nevermore Hollows is tell quirky stories. Tell something a little different. You can see my twisted sense of humor when I'm writing these stories. I literally thought you were about ready to tell us a story about capturing having a Bigfoot sighting because of some Whoppers, and I was like, that is literally a Nevermore Hollows storyline idea.
Honestly, you're right, but you're going to love that. Okay, so speaking of the Whoppers, you're going to love this part.
Okay.
Sun comes up.
Yes.
Now your brain starts rationalizing everything. The encounter's not happening. Your brain's rationalizing everything.
Right.
But I remember sitting there, and I was drinking I had a Mountain Dew. I remember drinking my Mountain Dew for my coffee that morning. I looked at Daniel Boone, David Crock, and I went, I tell you guys what happened last night.
Right.
We had coyotes.
Okay.
We had coyotes coming in. I said, go check your traps. Go ahead. See how many Whoppers are gone. Y'all went and baited all this area full of food. Right. And the coyotes came in.
Right. We brought this on ourselves. That's what you're thinking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Daniel Boone and David Crockett, they go, oh, hey, son, you're right. So they get up and they go, they pretty much trot over to the first one. And they started jumping up and down. They're waving at me to come over. And I'm like, I'm full of confidence here. I know I'm an expert. I'm right. And I strut over there. And this Whopper is intact.
Okay.
Not touched.
Yes.
Nothing. We checked every trap that they had supposedly set up with these Whoppers out there. Not one Whopper was touched.
Wow. Okay. All right. So you're right.
Now,
It
so
wouldn't have been
coyotes
coyotes
out there on military bases, and I can tell you, your veterans who are listening are going to agree with me on this one. The wildlife out there, they know soldiers. Soldiers are trashy. We are trash. We leave trash behind. We do. It's just a fact. We're going to leave trash. We're going to leave food bits behind, half-eaten MREs. They get tossed. This happens. So it's a free meal. So wherever there's soldiers at, and this site's been there,
right?
And allegedly the night before, Sergeant M had coyotes coming into the RAO.
Okay.
So if it was coyotes, it would have been touched.
Right.
Something, and
well, not just coyotes. There. Some sort of wildlife would have touched it.
Nothing.
Right. Wow.
Nothing came in and touched the whoppers.
Okay.
Since you brought it up, nothing came in. I do like the idea of the whoppers with Bigfoot, though, or even Dogman. Right. But I have another one for you, too. I have to talk about off air. I have an idea.
Look, good. Well, you've already given me, if no, look, I got to tell you, I love having conversations with you, but there's a Nevermore Hollow story about some dude trying to capture Bigfoot with whoppers. That's going to happen in Nevermore Hollows.
I'll be the first one to listen to it. I can tell you that because I love Nevermore Hollows. I brag about it all the time to everybody. Well, and even on my show, I'm like, listen, if you haven't listened to Nevermore Hollows, you have to go listen to them. So all the time on my show, I brag about you guys. And I brag about, Justin and Jay, Crips of the Corn, and Erica the Uncomfortable.
Right.
And so but these guys, I mean, your show is, I love it. And your is your episode for me, we did a one-on-one together. And podcast time travel hasn't dropped yet. I think it's dropping. Not this coming week, but it's I think following week after that.
Gotcha.
Next week.
Gotcha.
Is when your episode's going to drop. So Tommy, he's helps me produce and helps me with the editing. He's got it right now. He's working on the. Which of course, on my show we don't do anything scripted. It's all raw.
Right.
I've had one scripted show. And that was a canine discussion where, I researched in and looked into, the history of Dogman and werewolves.
Right.
And I had to stop because I went to rabbit holes, so many of them.
Right.
It was crazy. I could have done probably an 8 to 10 hour episode just on that alone. But yeah, your show, I love it. But you should, if there's a Whopper mentioned, maybe it should be my nose waffles instead of a Whopper.
Well, either way, yeah, it's going to be something quirky, and I got to tell you, I've already told you, since you and I've been becoming friends and developing this relationship, and I love the idea of a Drunken Cryptids bar in Nevermore Hollows. So maybe that's the episode we get to visit the Drunken Cryptids bar, is in that episode where someone is using some kind of, whether it be waffles or whoppers or whatever, trying to catch a Bigfoot.
That's hilarious. I would love that. It would be an honor to have the Drunken Cryptids bar set up in Nevermore Hollows. To be a picture there would be an honor that I'm speechless.
It's going to happen, brother. So excellent. All right. So back to your story. It feels like we're kind of at the end of it.
Yep.
So we've tied it up, and you and I have talked offline a little bit before too. You've got other experiences, and recently you've had a couple of expeditions that you've been upon. What I think, excuse me, what I think I would like to do is make this episode just about this one experience that we've spoken about right now, and bring you on again to talk about some of your other experiences.
Yeah, well, so what's really neat is that you're right. So the ultimate goal, and this is where and you we talked quite a bit off air, and we were talking about blessings and everything in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm given through this platform, in our field that we have, I'm being given some opportunities to just fill into my lap that I'd never thought for a million years I would ever have.
Right.
And, I did an interview with Todd Neese. We did a 2-part one, and, he relocated from Oregon here to Arkansas, and he's invited me to come up and go on an investigation with him with a camera crew.
Exciting. And I cannot wait. Look, after you put your episode out on that, we obviously want to have you on Nevermore Hollows and let you tell our audience about your experience when that happens.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm excited. And so, getting these encounters and listening to people talk about their experiences. And one that stands out to me was Chris. He came down and he sent me a long message. He's former law enforcement, military background, military family, great stand-up guy. And of course, I'll be honest with you, there's a huge message of him talking about this encounter. And, I told him honestly, I said, I just kind of skimmed through it, because I work a regular job, and so how it is. You work a regular job and you're doing the podcast, you're trying to vet interviews, you're trying to do this, encounters and stuff. So, and I have a good team behind me that helps me out. I mean, I'm not where I'm at if it wasn't for my team. So I have to give them a shout out. I do have to give, the Jacob and, Tommy and Gunnar and Talina for helping me out. So, but he did not want to do a phone interview. He lives about 45 minutes away and he wanted to come to the tavern. I built a bar in my backyard where my outdoor studio as well. So the Drunken Cryptids Tavern. Right. But he wanted to come down here, and he sat across the table from me and told me about this encounter that we talked about off air.
Right.
And he wanted to do it face-to-face, eye-to-eye. Because he was so scared that I wasn't going to believe him.
Okay. And
having this man sit there, look me dead in the eye, and describe this encounter to him gave me chills.
Right. And, that's important.
Yeah.
You can tell when if somebody is willing to look you in the eye and tell you a story, you can read that body language better to see how much of it's BS. And so I find that interesting that he was so sure of his story. So it was such a truthful story that he wanted you to see that up close and personal with him.
Yep. And so, and the property that this encounter took place on, and I was expecting Bigfoot. And this was not a Bigfoot encounter. However, it's his father-in-law's property. He's been in the family forever. And I was all excited to go, but we had to get special permission.
Right.
With no names, no locations, nothing, to where the family does not want any publicity from this at all.
Right.
They finally agreed to let's come and do a daytime investigation up there. And that investigation episode is dropping for me tomorrow. It's a 2-parter tomorrow, Thursday this week.
Okay.
And then, of course, I want to get on the show and share it with you guys because, you know this already, Alan, it was nuts.
Right. Yeah. That's some of the pictures.
This is back on the blessings to where now I'm getting an opportunity to, and this is for your audience too. I'm almost 50 and I'm now able to chase it. And I'm chasing a dream that I had when I was a kid.
Right.
For like you, I mean, you guys started, trying to write a spy novel. I remember this.
Right.
You were trying to do a spy novel, and your writing abilities, your talents, and they were trying to dictate and control how you were going to write.
That's right.
But using your platform,
the gatekeepers,
you now have the power, your own power, and you create this awesome world for us, the listeners. And I'm a listener. I'm a huge follower of the show. And we've talked offline about some of the characters and, my theories and what I picked up on.
Right.
But you create this awesome artistic platform that in this world, you create this world where people want to be a part of it.
Good. Thank you.
And then on my side, I'm actually, I have this platform now to where I'm no longer going to be the guy sitting on my couch watching these guys on TV. I'm going to be the guy on TV.
Right. Look, that is so, I love that. I've always had that mentality in myself too, of like, I wish I could do that. Well, the only difference between me and them is they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell the audience this, I'll tell my audience the same thing, is that, we're only limited by the only change that we put upon ourselves.
Amen, brother. Yeah.
And I got into a debate last night and, because my firm belief when it comes to God is that God didn't create heaven for us. He created earth for us. This is our domain. This is for us. God gave man dominion over the animals and the land.
Right.
This is for us.
Right.
You know, and I get so tired of hearing everybody go, well, Earth is Satan's playground. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. We've allowed him to come into it. We've allowed him to come and play.
Yeah, we've given it over to him. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is ours. This is for us. Heaven's a reward.
Right.
That's not home. This is our home. This is what God created the earth for. And I get chills every time I say that. This is for us. Our life is for us to enjoy. God doesn't want us to be miserable. We choose to be miserable by the decisions and choices that we've made. Now, granted, I've made some horrible decisions and choices in my past, as you have as well.
Yeah, all of us have.
You know, yeah, but if we keep making the same mistake, we have to pause and look and go, why am I making this?
Right.
And then we want to put the blame on somebody else. And, you know, through the internet now, I think that everybody has this instant gratification mentality. You know, if you listen to other podcasters and other shows and other people who are on TV, how many years do they put into this? How many hours do they put into this? I know you writing, you just don't sit down and an hour later you have an episode. No. You're putting days into this, hours into this.
Yeah, it takes about 3 full days to write a story, and then there's a day of editing. So I start on Monday, and I'll write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I edit it on Thursday. I record it on Friday. And when you record it, you have to edit those recordings. And then you have to add, you know, I like adding sound effects. So it's a full week's job. And like you say, I have a day job. And so this is me. I'm literally working 2 full-time jobs. One pays the bills at the moment, and the other is my passion. But I'm going to try to make the passion pay the bills, right?
See, that's the same thing with me. So right now, my day job, that's why I call it my day job, pays the bills.
Right.
And then it is a full-time job. And my passion, you know, is, you know, my second job, who I'm hoping eventually will pay the bills. And, you know, and again, for the audience too, though, is that, I mean, you know, if you're struggling anywhere right now in the world, you know, mentally, physically, whatever you're dealing with, it does get better. You just have to put effort into it getting better. You have to put it out there.
Right.
And it's not going to be instant. You're not going to pray to God today and tonight He's going to answer you. You have to keep up with it. You have to keep talking to Him.
Yes.
And you have to keep that going, and you have to project the blessings that come into your life.
You know, you and I both, you know, have been through some very dark times recently in our lives. And as I shared with you offline earlier this morning, literally 6 years ago, I stood in my yard and I was like, I want to die. Take me. And yesterday I stood in my yard and I was like, thank you. What a beautiful life I have at the moment. And so, but, you know, that didn't come easy. You know, it literally, you have to realize you're in a spiritual battle, you're in a physical battle, you're in an emotional battle, and you have to fight that battle. And at some point, you'll get to the point where you're winning more than you're losing.
You're 100% correct. 100% correct. And I don't think that most people realize that how many times that we do win.
Right.
Even when we take something as a loss, it's actually a win.
Right. You know, and recently I have a to-do list every morning. I get up and, you know, I'm just one of those guys I like to check off the list, right? But, you know, the first thing on my list is words have power. Okay? You know, I'm not going to speak anything negative over my life, my wife's life, my son's life, my daughter's life, my friends' lives. You know, I'm not going to be negative. I'm going to be positive. And you know, as you're speaking positive things, and you start to think positive things. As you're thinking positive things, you react to that. So, you know, you're literally restructuring yourself. You're arming yourself in the moment for these battles, so that when there is something that happens, you can go, okay, you know. You've not been, you know, doom and gloom up to the bad thing happens, which makes it worse. You know, you've been positive. You're working on yourself. You're working on yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, so that when that thing happens, you're more equipped to survive it.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, and people who want proof, look at your show. Use your show for an example.
Okay.
You came up, you started writing and doing a podcast. Old friend of yours, you guys run into each other at the grocery store.
Right.
You tell him, hey, man, I'm doing a podcast. Right. He listens to it, y'all meet for coffee, and he has sketched out sketches for you.
Right.
Now he's put some visualizations for your story, your creation. This is your baby.
Yep. And
so
for the listener,
God put him in your path that day at the supermarket, going, okay, Alan, here's for the next level.
Right. And for the listeners who've never heard that story, because I've never shared that with my listeners, is, my son is an artist, and obviously I wanted my son to be my art director. And I had asked him, and he was like, Dad, I love you. I love what you're creating, but I'm trying to make my own path, because he has a comic book that he's launched, and he's in 3 stores now, and he's really pushing that. And I said, I get it, son, I get it. He still helps me daily with certain things, but he did not want to be my art director. And on the week that I was like, Lord, I need somebody to help me with the art part of this. I need somebody. Chris calls me up out of the blue. It had been months and months and months since we had talked. And I just said, hey, what are you doing, Chris? And he says, oh, I'm doing this and doing that. What are you doing? I said, well, I've got a podcast. Didn't even tell him what it was about. And then he says, let's go to lunch. And we sat down at lunch. He had all these character sketches. He had all these ideas. And he says, I want to be part of this. On the week that I was praying for an art director. That's not accidental. That is by design. That's divine appointments being set for us.
I love that story. Because again, as we've talked off air, our similarities, our paths are so similar.
Right.
And I love the fact of the matter where, and I believe it, I wish we had a record, so I'm going to record it now. Quote, unquote, Matthew, I really feel you're my spiritual brother. Amen. Quote, unquote. and I feel the same way.
Right.
So, this year, like I said, I went through a really, really dark period of my life. Really, really dark. I've never been this dark before.
Right.
I've always been able to power through, overcome, and push things through. I went through a really, really, really dark period.
Right.
And as I was coming out of it, I was thinking of canning the show. The guy that pushed me so hard to, be the front man for the Drunken Cryptids and to do everything, he was kind of like my little pusher who was trying to get everything going.
Right.
Dropped dead of a stroke.
Oh, my.
He took the password with him to the website. He did all this stuff, everything. And I was just like, I didn't know what to do.
Right. And
a friend of mine, it was Memorial Day weekend, and I was going to cook out. And, the small group of friends, that they were going to come over, we were going to hang out. And out of the blue, he misses me. Okay. Hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm getting ready to grill some burgers and hot dogs if you want to come by. And he goes, oh, I'd love to. So he gets my address. He comes by, because I just moved to this house back in November.
Right.
And, he started asking me questions about the show. And I kept telling him, like, man, I don't know what to do. I'm on YouTube right now. I got this great kid, Gunner, helping me out. And Gunner's a great kid. God, he's a great kid. He's so talented. Mm-hmm. I said, Gunner's doing high school still. He's trying to do this, so I can't put too much pressure on him. And I don't know. I'm not getting interviews. I'm not getting encounters. It's just kind of stagnant. And he said, well, I want in. And he has, he called me up for an encounter that he had in Kentucky.
Right.
And I was like, he goes, well, I want in. And I said, okay. He goes, well, I kind of do this for radio stations and kind of help produce and cut and edit and everything. And I went, okay. And just kind of put in the back of my head. So, and he kept talking about it. And so a couple of days later, I texted him and I said, hey, were you serious about our conversation the other day? And he said, yeah. I said, well, could you come over? So he comes over and we sat down, and he wanted to know where I was wanting to go with this, what my goal was. And I told him, and he said, okay. And he goes, I want in.
Yes.
And I said, okay, cool. I said, well, here's the password to this. Here's the password to the drive. Here's the password to the Gmail, and here you go. Within a week, he had me on all streaming services.
Awesome.
The show grew almost overnight.
Right.
And at this point in time, too, though, same thing. Praying for something. Right. Give me a sign.
Right. And there it was.
Give me a sign. And Tommy shows up in my life.
Right.
And he has been a great blessing, and same thing. And so I have a good friend of mine, Talina. I've known her for 14 years. Watch her and me go through up and downs and stuff like that. And we were talking about 2 months ago. And she was like, so the show, tell me more about the show. And I was like, oh, what's going on? I said, I almost feel like I need an assistant.
Right.
And she goes, well, I said, yeah. I said, I can't keep track of everything. I said, I'm so overwhelmed because other shows are happening now for me as well.
Right.
Trying to schedule interviews, trying to get this going. I'm working the job. So I'd have Tommy I could throw things at, but, he's doing everything under the sun, plus all the editing, and he's actually helping promote show. And, so I just kind of venting out to her. She goes, well, I'll be the assistant. I was like, really? She goes, yeah. I said, you got to put up with me. And she goes, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And she's been a blessing in disguise right there, to where she will text me. Like she texted me this morning. She goes, hey, don't forget, you're talking to Ellen this morning.
Cool.
I was like, yes, I know.
Cool.
And she goes, don't forget, you got to go set for the fan club. I was like, yes, I know. I got it. Thank you. You know what I mean? So the blessings, and this is for everybody out there, the blessings are coming.
That's right.
And they will continue to come. But you just can't take the blessing and go, I earned that. No, you have to be humble and grateful for it.
That's right. Yep. And I found that
God every day for the blessings that He's given me.
Right. And I found that when
I get a chance to breathe the air and feel the sunshine on me.
That's right. And when I found that when I was, more humble about it and accepting it and going, thank you, man, wow, thank you, more blessings came.
Yep. Yeah, the other night we were down at the tavern and I had Finding Bigfoot on. And we were watching it and kind of checking it, oh, that's kind of cool and everything. And I looked at the team and I said, you know what, guys? That's going to be y'all on TV one day.
Wouldn't that be exciting?
I said, that's going to be y'all. It's not about me.
Right.
That's why I tell everybody the show's not about me. The show's about the encounters. The show's about having the eyewitnesses. And I want to create an environment for people who've had something that's happened to them. They can come on and talk and not be made fun of.
That's right. Yeah. And you get that, the 2 times that you had me on your show, it didn't even feel like an interview. It just felt like a conversation among, friends with, no condemnation, no disbelief. It was just, hey, let's talk about this. So I think you're on the right path.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, getting compliments from guys like you, Justin and Jay, and Eric Criminal and Comfortable, as he said too. He said, there's a lot of people in this field, and he goes, I honestly feel like you're one of the few good ones.
Good.
And that made me feel good.
Yes.
It's where, and that's the environment I want to create. I want to create this, safe spot for you to come sit by the fire with me.
Right. I
Tell
like
me what
that.
happened.
Look, that's a great tagline, dude. That is. I think that's a great tagline. Just come sit by the fire with me. Even though we're in the virtual world, that pulls you in. It's almost like those. I know a lot of our folks that listen to us are not our age group, and they may not recognize the reference. But the fireside chats, where the whole family would sit around the radio and listen to the radio, and it didn't feel like you were listening to the radio. It felt like it was part of the, you're literally there. So I like that quote that you just did.
Thank you. Yeah. Come sit by the fire with me. Let's have a conversation. Let's chat. And it's, that's what the whole concept for. And I've had people not use their real names on the show, and
right.
I'm fine with that.
Right.
But if they feel, and I've had people say, oh man, I bet you that encounter, that was probably, that was all full of, BS. And I'm like, this person reached out to me
right.
about something that happened to them.
Right.
They're not getting paid for it. I'm not paying them. I'm not getting paid, And this is somebody reaching out to me to say, hey, I had something happen to me. Right. And I just want to talk to somebody about it who's not going to make fun of me.
I like it. Yes.
Who's not necessarily believe, but is going to maybe come at it from a different angle. There's going to maybe throw some spins on it. Like, okay, so this happened to you. So tell me about, so while this was going on, tell me a little bit more about this. Right. And try and get to the bare bones of it. And, like the investigation we went on a couple of weeks ago that you and me talked about and I sent you the pictures of, when I talked to you about it, I told you, if I could go back and redo his first episode, my whole opinion on that episode is different now. Right. And it's where, I want to be able to have the environment for people to come on and be open-minded to go, I never looked at it that way. Right. And I've had people come on the show and they'd be telling me stuff and I'd pause and go, Well, that makes a lot of sense. I've never looked at it that way.
Yeah. Look, I love to be intellectually challenged. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but I like to be able to take something and go, well, let me consider that. I may discard it, but I love the whole intellectual pursuit.
Yes. We're still doing an episode, aren't we?
Say what?
We're still recording, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
I love it. This is what it's supposed to be about.
Right.
So for your audience out there, I will tell you guys, listen, it gets better. It's going to get better. No matter what, it's going to get better.
Right.
And get outside. If you want proof that God exists, feel the sun on you.
Amen, brother. So
feel the breeze that's come through.
So I agree totally with that. And what I love about this conversation today is it started out introducing you to my audience. We talked about your experience, which was which is fascinating. Then we got off onto trying to uplift the folks who may be listening to us who are going through something. And I think that's where I want to end this one, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, you and I both, is create content that just helps you escape from your troubles, just if only for a few minutes, that you're able to disengage from the negativity and hopefully, come to a place and listen to, some content that just takes you somewhere positive, and maybe even challenges you. So I want to end it with what you just said. If you're out there and you're listening and you're in a dark place, it does get better. And Matthew and I both were in some very dark places in our lives, and we no longer are. And there's always a community out there. And I like what you said earlier about finding your tribe. I am. When I started this podcast, I was crushed. My whole life had fallen apart. My creative spirit had died. And when I decided to, start, writing again and trying to figure out how to put this out there, man, it's like night and day. So there is a tribe out there for you. And Matthew and I appreciate that you're spending a few moments with us today. We accept you as part of our tribe. So with that,
welcome to the tribe, everybody. Welcome
right.
to the tribe.
That's right. So Matthew, it has been a great conversation. We're going to have you on again on another True Tales of Nevermore Hollows, and we're going to talk about some more experiences that you've had. But I really appreciate you being on the show. And with that, everybody, we thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking with you next time.
Alan, the pleasure's been mine. It's been an honor. I mean, this is a big honor for me. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you. It means so much to me. It really does.
My pleasure. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.